The Quantitative Skills in Science project presented to the Australian Council of Deans of Science Teaching and Learning Forum. It's a gathering of curricular leaders in science, associate dean academics, deans of science, and program directors. So we had the opportunity to present our initial findings from the Quantitative Skills in Science project to this group of teaching and learning leaders, and we really wanted to take the opportunity to actively engage them in understanding some of the issues with quantitative skills that we uncovered during the last year and a half of our project. Our project came from a whole of program perspective. We found a lot of lovely, really great, innovative examples of how people were doing stuff within their own teaching, within their own unit or their prac, but our focus was, what does it look like across the whole degree program? We focused in on two key findings. The first one being that while everyone is acknowledging that quantitative skills is an essential learning outcome for science graduates, what we found is that the notion of quantitative skills is often left vague and not truly defined or teased out. So that when people are talking about quantitative skills, not actually talking about the same thing. So we're seeing a lot of miscommunication occurring. We used a case study methodology, though, to give you an overview. And our sampling strategy was not to find out what every science program was doing. It was to go to universities where they had identified that they were trying to do something about it. So the sampling strategy was biased towards, we have acknowledged it's an issue and we would like to do something about it, or we are doing something about it. That was our sampling strategy. And the second finding that we presented was that within higher education institutions, there's not a lot of discussion of teaching and learning in the sciences. So that mathematicians, scientists, and biologists don't have an opportunity to come together and actually discuss broader curricular issues. We interviewed a total of 48 academics and 38 interview sessions. Some of the sessions had 2 or 3 academics in there. All the associate deans we interviewed separately. From that, we went to 13 universities, 2 overseas for benchmarking purposes, 11 in Australia. And we created 12 online case studies. You might have seen these before if you're on our mailing list. If not, we've also given you hard copies in your book, pages 28 to 66. And it's a snapshot of how people are trying to embed quantitative skills across the whole of the curriculum. And the idea of that was to share what people were doing so we could get a better understanding of how people were trying to think about this across the whole curriculum. So in the project, we found some great practice, some very innovative approaches that individual lecturers were taking to try to build the quantitative skills of their science students. Unfortunately, this was more of a piecemeal approach. What we didn't find a lot of evidence of was where academics were coming together and thinking about the curriculum holistically, thinking about how students learn over the course of 3 or 4 years and how quantitative skills are built across the curriculum. So to begin the Australian Council of Deans of Science Teaching and Learning Forum, we had all the participants engage in a quite simple activity where they were asked to identify 4 challenges of building quantitative skills in science. I want you to think to yourself, and on your 4 scraps of paper, you're going to come up with 4 answers to this question. 1 answer per scrap of paper. And I want you to write down before you talk to your new friends 4 challenges that face your institution when it comes to the quantitative skills of your science students. So they took the opportunity to think about their context, and on a piece of paper, they wrote down a challenge. In the end, each participant had 4 pieces of paper with 4 challenges written down. This gave all of the participants the opportunity to really think about their own context and the challenges they face. Then we had them engage within a larger group to identify overlapping challenges, challenges that were common across institutions and challenges that were specific to their own university. And what we found from this simple activity is that within 5 minutes, the participants were able to generate over 120 challenges, and they found while several of them were overlapping challenges, there were many that were also quite specific to their institution and their educational context.
Then what we had them do is we presented a challenge to the teaching and learning leaders present, which was to come up with some actions or strategies that they could undertake in their own university.
Okay, you've probably worked out what I'm going to ask you to do next because you've already started. I'd like you to discuss amongst your table something that you can do. Now, I realize that it's quite complex, and so I also realize it's very easy to start talking about the challenges again. We have to be aware of those challenges, but what I'm trying to get us to think about right now is how can we move forward? As I've already said, I see this room as people in a position to influence change and think about this at a whole of program level. So what I would like to do is harness your collective creativity, brain power, ideas, thoughts about how to move forward. And these are the two questions I really want us to think about. What can I do at my own university? Because if we can all leave with one or two things we can do at our own university and generate that list, we'll have a lot of ideas for people that aren't here of things that they can be doing to move this forward. And then what can we do at the national level? And this comes back to the Teaching and Learning Center. Things that are beyond our control that if nationally we had more influence, we would be able to move a lot further. So these are the two levels I want to think about when we think about how to implement.
Now naturally, every university is at a different place in dealing with quantitative skills as a graduate learning outcome in science. So what we found in those institutions where quantitative skills wasn't quite on the agenda yet is a lot of ideas or strategies from academics talking about how they would raise awareness within their university. And we had some great suggestions, such as taking the report to the dean and presenting it to the dean to talk about it at an upcoming faculty meeting. Another idea that was suggested was that the report could be tabled at the Teaching and Learning Committee so that teaching and learning chairs could be aware and start coming up with strategies to address this issue. So it became evident through some of the responses that some universities were further along in thinking about quantitative skills and how they're designed through the science curriculum. So what we found in those universities is we were seeing suggestions like, we've got a quantitative skills unit, however we want to see more co-teaching in place. So there are more sophisticated thoughts about how to tweak the funding model such that it was an incentive for people to be teaching across disciplines. Another great suggestion was for associate deans to target teaching and learning grants specific to quantitative skills. So projects where people working across disciplines to try to address the quantitative skills in science project would have a priority in their funding rounds.